Welcome to Building Toronto Skyline, a podcast exploring the current state of Toronto's condominium industry from a unique construction perspective through engaging and entertaining podcast interviews with the many stakeholders in the industry. This podcast is brought to you by Fusion Corp, a construction management company. Here's the founder and CEO of Fusion Corp Developments, Inc., and author of Building Toronto Skyline and Battle of the Skyscrapers, the host of this podcast, Nick Ainis. How you doing, Nick?
Good. We're doing back-to-back today.
Back-to-back, but I got to ask you.
Where's the applause? I'm missing the applause again. Wow. I got a great audience today.
A lot of people came out to witness this. I want to ask you, Nick, the question I asked you before we spoke with Norm Lee, great guest. I know we have another great guest today. But are you superstitious? Like, does Friday the 13th mean anything to you?
No, but it should mean something to you. I told you that already.
So be careful of
You're
black
in
hats.
Your basement, and I see a Jason mask hanging over there. So
okay. But again, we have a witness to this threat.
No, there's no threat. By the way, no, I'm not. I don't really think about it. You make your own luck in this life, and you just hope to God. You hope that God is with you. So that's it.
Good advice. And today's guest, you met Norm Lee for the first time, and you had great rapport with Norm. Will you have great rapport with today's guest?
I already do. Mark Cohen is a man, very well distinguished gentleman, and I've known him for many years. We always get along great. So I think we're going to have a great rapport today. And nice to see you, Mark.
Likewise. Very great to see you and Mike. Nick is like, he's like a girlfriend. You love him. And if you don't see him for a year or two or three or five as the industry, you'll always love him. But he's having been in the business for over 40 years, you meet a lot of different people, and a lot of people are great when the market's great, and a lot of people who aren't so great when they're hurting. Nick is the same, always. Yeah. It's really a thrill to see him. It's always good to see him, whether we're thinking of ways to conquer something in the world or whether we're commiserating with the difficulties of the world. So I couldn't think of a better way to spend a Friday the 13th, which this case is definitely a lucky one. Sounds good.
And Mark, we've known each other, I think, about 10 years, or longer than 10 years, 15, I think, around that time. And we met at one of Fusion Corp's bigger projects, or the first project that we worked on was Carmelina Condos. I think that's where we met. And we've kept in touch over the years, and we've had coffee together and talked about the industry, and we try to help each other wherever we can, wherever there's an opportunity for each other. And I've introduced you to a few people, and actually you're working on one of our projects right now.
Exactly. So we have, and I also, as much as I can, always endorse you as first, but sometimes, you have a constructor and a marketer, and sometimes they work very much on the same thing, but they work at different times. So there have been probably a couple occasions like the one you just referenced where we are working together in the sense that we probably were both involved in the design to some degree. I get the thing sold and you get the thing built, and we sort of lose touch, but then we come back together at the topping off party or whatever. So we do, the good folks in the industry do land together. And fortunately, in addition to seeing you and having our coffees and talking about the world, we just landed on something together last week. So hopefully I can get my part done so you can get yours done.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a lot about all that stuff. But first, let's just give the audience a little bit of a background. I've heard your story many times, starting in the Camross days, I think. Is that right? So
close, not exactly. I'll try to give everyone 37 years in 3 minutes. I worked in-house for 25 years. And I'm a sales and marketing guy, and builders who market and sell condos and new homes either hire their own people or they hire outside companies. So I was one of those own people for 25 years. I worked for 12 years for a big machine in the 80s called Bramley Limited. I worked
that's right.
5 years. I went to Mancus Developments. They were condo guys, brought them into low-rise. I then got hired by the Concrete 8X guys to handle the City Place project in downtown Toronto, the largest project in the city. I was their VP of Sales and Marketing, and then my last employer was Tribute. That was in the, I guess that was in the late, early 2000s, brought them into high rise and handled all of their sales and marketing. And then, so spent 25 years working for those big machines. And as when you work for big machines, it's not just selling the stuff. You conceptualize it, you design it, you work with constructors and marketers and architects and all that. So I have a good sort of lens in that regard. And about almost 20 years ago, I opened my own shop, the Condo Store Marketing Systems, whereby I really do the same thing. I work on 8-10 projects at a time, but they're not for the same person. They're for clients as opposed to an employer. So I still very much am involved in design, marketing, selling.
For sure.
Individual projects throughout and just outside of the GTA. And I've been doing that for about 18 years on my own.
And you were so I got Cameron's totally wrong, is that right?
Yeah, but there's sort of like, there's only a certain number of big machines that hire guys like me. So it's sort of like the Canadian Football League, there's about 9 teams. There's not whatever, but Camross was certainly one of the big boys, like Tridel and Monarch and some of the others, but they weren't on my list. But
are you affiliated with the Condo Store? Are they, or is it kind of you're a separate entity? Or
the Condo Store, the Condo Store is a brokerage, and that was founded in downtown Toronto, and we opened so the Condo Store is a sister company of my company. The company I called opened as the Condo Store Marketing Systems.
Yes.
Condo Store is a brokerage. It's like a real estate brokerage, like a Royal LePage or a Century 21. But the Condo Store Marketing Systems is a sister company of the Condo Store, and we work for builders, design, market, sell their stuff. So the Condo Store, we have as I said, a relationship with. The Condo Store Marketing Systems, I'm the managing partner of. So that's my business.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
As I said, we've been trying to build Toronto's skyline a little better for the last 18 years.
Yeah, that's great. And I've seen, what's and I understand your approach is a little bit like you're very hands-on. You're very honorable and very close relationship with the developer. You have a very unique, although there's a lot of people that do what you do in the marketplace, your system is unique. And tell us why. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I thank you for that. I think there's lots of people who are doing well these days, or up until a couple of years ago. When you work for developers in-house, it's not just sell the product. You conceptualize it, you design it, you understand, working with people like you. Some things cost more money, and will the buyers pay for it? Will the buyers not pay for it? Everything's nice to have, but in our business, as construction costs are a pivotal thing, it's important to pre-sell projects that are profitable so they can get built. So I think for the people who work in my shop have all worked for developers. Selling in a good market is easy. It's about making money. So I think from a perspective, what makes us different, our focus is on making developers money. Because when you work for the people I worked for, they don't care about the 100 sales you made one weekend. They care about the last 20 in a building or the last 20 in a subdivision. They care about profit. They care about selling and getting their best dollar. So I think because of the team that I have, who are all developer-based people, many who worked with me at those different companies, I think there's a real focus on selling for more. And I can say, if not anything else, in just about every market I'm at, we sell for more than the guys next door. My clients need that. They find out later that despite having people like you at the helm, controlling costs are difficult. And of course, you buy a condo, you buy a house, the price is locked in, but the cost from his perspective. So our focus very much is on selling for more, and obviously at the speed that people need, in order to make it work. We can sell a project out in a minute, as anyone could, if they're cheap. But if they're too cheap and the builder can't afford to build them, that's a problem, because they end up getting canceled.
So we see that a lot. Like as a construction manager, you're going into these meetings, and the developer is trying to offer something to the marketplace, and it costs a lot of money. And we are saying, like, really? You really want to do that? I'm not sure if that's a good idea. And that's sometimes when we call on you, Mark, because I say, hey, you should really, because we see a lot of times where someone is a little bit, lacking something in the marketing or the experience end. And we say, you should really talk to this guy, Mark Cohen, really nice guy. Always start by saying he's a really down-to-earth, nice guy, very honorable, honest, and transparent. And that's when we bring you on, because we see the need that these guys are sometimes missing out on something that they really need to really get the right experience and get the right team together. So that's when you come in, Mark. And I see.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sorry about that. I think, not to toot my own horn, it's just training, it's just breeding. But, in a good market, people pay for everything. But when the market's tough, or when construction costs change, people won't necessarily pay for things. So it's easy to say, throw this into the building, throw this into the suite. But the real question is, are people going to pay for it? So I think, coming back to us, a difference. There's a discipline, and there's a I guess we'll say a wisdom by virtue of being around a long time and understanding things. I talked someone into putting a swimming pool in a building on a lake, where he didn't really think that people needed a swimming pool because of the lake. But some people don't like swimming in lakes. Mm-hmm. I similarly talked to someone in downtown Toronto, in Yorkville, on a very expensive high-end project. Despite hearing from an interior designer and other, wise people, I talked him out of doing an indoor pool, because an indoor pool, when you're selling $3 million condos, most of those people aren't going to go in that pool. They're going to go in their own clubs. Their grandchildren aren't allowed to come anyways. So it's easy to say, give, do. But at the end of the day, the business is about being efficient and doing what needs to be done. So what makes us different? I think we understand things that most of the sales and marketers don't necessarily understand, and many of them haven't had to. Don't get me wrong, many of them do. But we understand, because of our background, and my background working for very disciplined, difficult people, demanding people, I should say, difficult sometimes, how to spend money. A, in terms of the construction, and B, as a marketing VP, what you need to spend in terms of marketing. I think that makes us different, selling for more, and probably most importantly, I think it's about avoiding conflict. And we decline a lot of work. We work on 2 handfuls of projects. So if you hire my company, you get the A team. There's no B team. We don't work that way. I'm not that greedy. I'm not that ambitious. I always want to be the best, not the biggest. So, and now that the times are, which we'll probably talk about, Nick, times are different, as we pull out of a mess we've been in. I'd like to think that, some of the stuff I've learned and my team's learned over the years will help us get out of where we are right now.
Mark, the video, just a quick thing on the video, your hands blocking the view there.
Sorry about that.
Mike?
Okay. Are we good now?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
Thanks. Sorry about that. I get excited, so I start moving my hands.
Okay. Well, look, so that's why your experience matters and your philosophy matters, because now we're not in good times. So why don't you walk us back like a year ago or longer, whatever it takes, and tell us what you've seen in the marketplace in the last, say, year and a half. When did you start noticing the difference? Obviously, the interest rates were rising. That could have been, that's when I started seeing a change in the marketplace. People were putting projects on hold when the interest rates were peaking. Tell us the story. Give us the
I'll try to be brief, but so when you
don't be brief, because this is like the major topic of the day.
Okay. Well, I thank you. And you'll cut me off if you need to. So when you sell the future, you anticipate things. You sometimes plan things. You sometimes count on things that happened in the past. Whatever it is, it gives you a piece of wisdom after. Sort of like when I went to university. I don't remember what I learned 40 years ago, but it's kicking in now. Mm. So all that experience comes in and helps you in life, not just in business, but in life. So Canada Canada, we're heavily taxed, right? You make a decent dollar, they're going to take 53% of your money, and they pay 13% HST. So basically, 2/3 of every dollar you make in Canada is gone. I spend a lot of time in the winter in Florida. They can't believe that people pay that much tax. There's no state tax there. People write off their mortgages there. We can't do that here.
Soon no property tax I hear down there too.
Exactly. So fundamentally, what it means, however, the only piece of anything that's tax-free in Canada is the sale of a principal home. So the reality is, if you buy a home and you live in it and you sell it, the profit on that house, you don't pay tax on, you keep it. That's how people make money in Canada with real estate. COVID comes into play, and I foresaw this, although it's easy to foresee dips in the market, but everyone was buying real estate. First of all, you could borrow money for nothing. And why wouldn't you borrow money to buy a home, which you're going to make someone's principal residence, so that you, in fact, can avoid paying tax in a country where we're taxed through our ears? So I knew that ship would sail, that something was going to happen, because in COVID, people were buying like crazy. They weren't even going to the sales offices because of safety issues. They were buying and buying and buying. And when you talked about rates before, Nick, there's a direct correlation between the cost of borrowing and the cost of people will pay. If it costs you less to borrow, people will spend more money.
Yep.
Because it's your home. It's the only dollar you'll ever make in Canada you don't pay tax on. So COVID encouraged everyone to buy. And this is the conversation. And who was to know what was to be? I'm never going to leave my house again. I'm never going to go to an office again. I'm never going to go to a restaurant again. Who knows? But we're buying groceries. We're buying bigger houses. Our whole life is going to be, working at home, which and that has implications for business. And some people continue to work at home. But I pretty much knew that the world was going to come back to work. You had to believe it. We all need to live. We need to get out. So during COVID times, 2020, 21, people are buying like crazy. They're borrowing for nothing. And then eventually something's going to happen. There's a war in Russia. There's a war in the Middle East. The United States, I don't want to get talking to the United States, but the political situation in the United States is very contentious, needless to say.
Yep.
Trudeau was giving out money to everybody for nothing, and I don't have a political opinion on that. He might have been doing what anyone else would have done, but someone had to pay that back, either whether it was them or us. Rates were going to have to move, and rates moved up, 12 times over a period of 18 months. The rates never come back down as fast as they move up, so that triggered something for people. The cost of borrowing is going to go up, so I'm not sure what I'm buying into, and more importantly, the cost of what I'm buying is going to go down. Why would I buy something now? Because if the rates are moving upward, the prices are effectively coming down. People have less money in the market. That means that people will pay less for property. So as rates were going up, the mentality of the buyer was, the prices are going down. Why would I buy anything in the future? And that's basically where we still are today, 4 years later. And the disconnect, and Nick, you know as well as anyone in this city, is that construction costs have gone through the roof. Now, you would know better than most, and myself, if that's leveling off to some degree in the past number of months.
It is.
But
not considerably. It never does considerably.
Yeah.
I mean, you see a lot more. You see a lot more competition with the trades. There's a lot of more interest in bidding on projects, and I think the cost. There's definitely a more competitive market out there. Prices are coming down, but not in a way that's going to change. Not going to be a game changer.
And not to the extent that they went up in the last number of years. I mean, I'm finishing projects now that my clients, construction costs have gone up 30-40% from the time that he sold the building 4 years ago. Does that mean that they're going to come down 30-40% over the last, have the last 12 months? I think what he's suggesting is exactly what you said. To some degree, there's been some leveling off, but fundamentally, and if everybody thinks everyone's going to drop their pants, the construction guys, their prices because they're looking for work. Some of them are going to be out of work. They're going to be out of business, which might, as you know better than anyone, might keep the prices somewhat high. If you want to buy steel, I'm the only guy who's in business still. This is the price. So there's that whole balancing act that you're far more savvy about than I, because you live it every day. But from a higher level, from a marketing perspective, as a developer, working for these guys who understand stuff, like there's no reason for me to think that construction costs are going south to any major way, whereby I can tell my client, roll the dice and sell the building for X number of dollars. I think at the end of the day, it appears that if you're building with concrete, if you're building high rise or mid rise, if you're not at $1,000 a foot, you're not going to make $1.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to think that. There's no reason, to think that if I'm a buyer, that if I'm a seller, that construction costs are going to go down, and $1,000 a foot is sort of just where we start, outside of the city. So the where we're at today, the real punchline is we're at a stalemate. The buyers don't believe in the prices that the sellers need to achieve in order to make things work. That's where we're at. That's why all of the pre-con projects, despite the fact it's costing these guys everyone money to sit on them, and they're not all going to turn them into rental buildings. That's a different story. But the reason all these projects have been on the shelf for 2 years, they're not going to market, is because the buyers aren't going to pay what the builders need to sell for in order to make it work. And we're still there today. Mm-hmm. And what's made it worse, most importantly, is because of all the people who bought in COVID, 2020, 2021, 2022, now that we're in 2025, all these people have units to close. Yep. So all of these people who bought at a price are buying at prices that probably are not achievable in the market today. In many cases, they're underwater. And of course, because they have the opportunity to resell their units and assign their units, there's stuff out on the market at prices that were lower than they were 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So, there's a whole world of that. They're what we call assignments, because these people buy, and, a lot of the buyers, as we all know, were investors. Well, the investors, now the problem the investors are, the units aren't worth what they paid for. The units cost a lot more to carry than they thought because the rates are higher. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of supply all of a sudden. All of a sudden, we're talking about the immigration and what's happening in Toronto and the movement to Toronto, and it's bulletproof, and you can't buy a house for under $1.5 million in the GTA. So condos, who cares? As long as they're up to 6, 7, 800 square feet, who cares if they're 1,100 foot? So the mentality was the condos are always cheaper than homes. And a lot of the new Canadians who come here are used to smaller spaces, more efficient spaces. So just keep buying them. Well, the reality is we've now hit the wall. There's tons of them on the market. And the condo market hasn't had supply for years. All of a sudden, there's too much supply.
Right. So we noticed, so you talked about COVID, and we noticed a huge escalation cost during COVID. That was on a construction basis. After COVID started tapering off, and things were a little bit more back to normal, those escalations disappeared, but the price was relatively the same or continuing to go up. We've seen a bit of the cost coming down, and the competition increasing on bidding on projects for trades and suppliers. But let's be honest, labor never goes down. Labor costs, because most people are unionized, and they have to they sort of renegotiate their deals every few years or every year or so, and then you have all the taxes that you pay for a condo. You're paying HST, you're paying for development charges, which is a big component of the cost of a home. And they're talking about changing all of this. I don't know if what's going to happen down the pipeline. Maybe with this new government, we'll see. But, this has all been affecting everybody for so long. You've got this major supply issue that you mentioned. Are you launching any projects, for example, and is anyone buying?
So the answer is largely on my advice. we're not launching projects, and haven't for the last 2 years, for the most part. If a builder is looking for a home run, if a builder is looking to sell 60-70% of his units, which usually means investors, and then, get himself to a construction stage, and then, babysit the inventory and hope for another day. Very few projects that fit in that category, including my own, are being launched. If my client's saying to me, should I launch? My question isn't, the answer isn't yes or no. The answer is, what are your objectives? What's the cost of not launching? I don't believe that the 70% send in worksheets, get a bunch of investors, get the thing sold, and then worry about it later. I don't know when that's coming back. I think it'll come back sooner than most people think, but people aren't bullish about it. So I think sometimes in the world you have to hit singles and doubles and not home runs. So the market here isn't used to that. So I can tell you, as one of the leaders, one of the guys who's been around, I'm not afraid to go out and hit some singles and doubles enough to get going. The issue with respect to launches is it costs a lot of money to launch. It costs, there's carry-on requirements, there's bonding requirements, there's architecture, there's construction, there's, you need to spend many, many hundreds of thousands of dollars to launch. So if you've got a special project in a special place that will have a captive audience, and they might very well be people who want to live in a little building in their community, or in something that's special, that's something that fits them. I'm not afraid to launch it now. The issue is, because of the public sentiment that it's not a good time to buy, even the unsophisticated buyers who've been living in houses for 30 years, you need to be able to provoke them to buy. You need to be able to give them a reason to buy. You need to say, I need you to buy. The fact that there's 70 units in the building, you can have one of them, that's not going to get them to buy. You've got to make it attractive for them to buy in a way that you can afford to, whether it's helping them with their deposit, whether it's some kind of financial incentive. I mean, it's a great time to buy. And you buy something new, condos, your money sits in a lawyer's trust account. You know that the condo date can move. Who cares? Buy it. It's definitely going to cost more in 4 years. You get to, because of the costing, you get to customize, make your own finishes, make adjustments. It's a pretty safe place to put your money. But the mentality, the psyche of the buyer is, it's not a good time to buy. So unless you're prepared to provoke them and offer some kind of comfort and some reason to buy, they're not going to buy quickly. So the future market is very, very slow. Condos. Are people buying anything? Sure they are. A lot of the stick-built product, a lot of the low-rise stuff is selling. People are selling 30, 40, 50, 60 townhomes a weekend. Townhomes, for example, stacks, townhomes, back-to-back towns, detached homes, stuff between 700,000 and $1.2 million, wherever it may be, as far as St. Catharines, as far east as Bowmanville, everywhere in between. People will buy that and are buying that in healthy numbers, because when you're selling wood frame stuff, you're probably selling it for $500-$600 a square foot. You're selling it for half the price of concrete. There's wasted space, there's stairs, there's this, there's that. But in many cases where there's no underground, you're selling it for half the price. You're either selling it for half the price of concrete, or you're getting twice as much for the same price. That's working. That's working.
Well, good to know. So we're on. So what is your strike? So you said you're hitting singles and doubles. So explain, what does that mean? Is it the market is such that you're taking a slow approach to sales? Is that what you meant, kind of thing, or?
No, I think what I meant is more so is that my mindset, and it's not just because I'm bored, is that the show must go on, and time is money. And sitting costs people money, and some builders, most of the projects, most of the land is bought with borrowed money, so it's costing people an awful lot of money to do nothing. So singles and doubles mean like sort of in the old days when I worked in house, instead of saying, here we've got a building with 100 units, how do we sell 70 of them in a minute? It's more so of how do we sell, maybe we can sell 70 of them over 18 months. Let's spend this money this month, this money this month, this money this month, and let's look at a business plan that's a little more modest, a little more stable, and a little more consistent. And as always, we make adjustments in the market. If things we're doing are working, great. If things we're doing aren't working, we change it. But let's make adjustments in the market. Let's make adjustments to our strategy, to our game plan. And singles and doubles mean you've got a building with X number of suites. Let's look at a plan whereby we can sell them over this period of time and spend marketing money this way. And instead of blowing our brains out and telling everyone there's a sale and come and get it and going to real estate agents, let's think about touching the community. Let's think about events on site. Let's think about barbecues. Let's think about, cooking demonstrations. Let's educate people on what it's like to live in a condo, as opposed to putting up some ads, calling it a world of real estate agents and hope they all come in and bring worksheets and buy the thing, sight unseen. So the singles and doubles are part of a plan that I'm now looking at on a number of projects where the builders are saying, well, it's spring. Spring's not very good. It's going to be cold in 6 months. Can we do something now? So I'm working on plans to launch projects with different expectations. And obviously the builder's got to say, okay, this is the time frame to sell it. This is the cost to sell it. It might be spread out over a different period of time. And this is the price we can sell these at, and then hypothetically with some lift over time, versus sitting and doing nothing for another year. And what does that cost? Yeah, exactly. So I'm very much working the game plan approach.
So it's a slower approach, more, defined at interacting with marketing in different ways, different strategy, not your typical condo strategy, provoking, as you said, the community. Does it matter what project it is? Is it, for example, a great example is Orangeville. We're doing a project 60 on Broadway together. That's in my opinion, I thought I might sell because it's in Orangeville and maybe people's priorities are different. So I thought to myself, they got a good chance. And they did a very quiet approach over there, and they haven't actually gone out to the market, and they were able to make some sales, which was great. But I think bringing you on was a great idea. And I think your strategy is good too, and it's appropriate for that location.
Yeah, so we're going to change that up fully. That's a project, very good project. I wouldn't get involved in a project unless I thought I could sell it, because otherwise, I don't need the work. I only need work that pays. So
exactly.
It's so Orangeville, since you mentioned, a very captive audience. The buyers might be Orangeville empty nesters who want to live their lives differently, who might have orientation to being away part of the year, who might be, have farms in Caledon, who might have cottages on Lake Huron, who might go south for the winter. With COVID, people can work from different places. There's a natural orientation from Brampton to go to Orangeville and escape from Brampton. And Brampton, is busy, and is where I started working 40 years ago. And Brampton turns, and you can't buy anything under $1 million in Brampton. Really, Brampton's a strong area, so there's a world of people in Brampton who'll say, "I want to smell the country and smell the roses." And Orangeville's got a lot of beautiful things. So that project and those buyers, many of those buyers are probably cash buyers. They have houses to sell, but they have the money. And Orangeville's in a very good location. There's an orientation to the west. You can go to Elora. You can go to, to all different parts of Ontario, if you put it on the map, because people can live in different places now. So the issue there is, I wouldn't wait for 2 years to launch that project, because I think the buyers there, for example, they're a captive audience. You have to educate them. You have to make them understand how it works, and you have to make them understand why it's a good time to buy and why it's a safe thing to do. And what's the worst thing can happen if things didn't happen? You get your money back. I mean, it's so I think that's an education process. But a project like that, which I think is a winner, a big winner, we actually just came into it last week. So we're just developing a new strategy on how do we move buckets of people into becoming buyers, because those people, I can tell you, if the thing was built, they'd all be looking at it, and that some of them would be buying it.
Yeah,
so we got to get some of them to buy them now. So I don't think the whole world's on hold. I think if you're looking for investors, an infusion of investor money and small product that we're filled with all over the GTA, that's a tough go because the investors have blown their brains out and they're all losing money now. There's new money and there's new opportunities, but the big issue, as I said, with the larger buildings, you need a lot of buyers, and there's a lot of people have been hurt in the last few years. People want to buy a place to live in Orangeville or all kinds of places around. I wouldn't wait too long for them, and it is ironically a very good time to buy, even though people are sheep. We'll wait till everyone else buys, and you don't care what the price is. There's got to be people who will move ahead of that. So that's sort of our objective there, and on many projects that we're looking at.
So I think that's where we are in the marketplace. We're in a very completely different environment. I guess the days of the investor are pretty much at an end. Would you say?
Well, they're certainly on hold, and they have been for a couple of years by virtue of the lessons they've learned, I guess.
And I think the supply market in Toronto has basically stopped major Toronto projects, and they really can't get out and launch their larger condo buildings because there's a big risk there.
Yeah, exactly. That sums it up very nicely. The interesting thing though is, and I've seen a lot in almost 40 years, lots of stuff is selling, number one. We're not at a complete stop. And parts of the resale market in the GTA are stronger than one would think. It's not crazy. People aren't lining up. I mean, I have a daughter who's looking at a house, in Midtown Toronto, and she came in with and she's married to actually a builder. So they have vision. They're going to buy something and turn it into something else. But, they came in on it wasn't cheap. It was, Eglinton Avenue Road area. They came in on a house they came in about 20% over asking, and they didn't even look at their offer. The house sold for 30% over asking.
Oh, wow.
We're talking about $1.5 million that sold for 2.4 or something along those lines. So there's some, it's very expensive to live in the GTA, and if you can afford it and if you demand it, you're not going to get much for a couple $1 million in a detached home. You're not going to get a lot if you want to be in a central area. So markets like that are off the charts, surprisingly. As I said, stick built stuff under $1 million,
not going to happen
anywhere.
Yeah,
is a lot of stuff's been happening. Good stuff's been happening in Pickering and in
outside of
Markham
Toronto,
and all kinds of places. Yeah.
Well, if I look at it, if I was interested in buying a condo and I was looking at Toronto, I would hit the resale market. There's tons of opportunity there. The prices are 20% below the peak level, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah. So why bother buying something new when there's tons of inventory in the marketplace?
Yeah, the only reason is the only difference, of course, is you buy it now, you got to close it now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. But there are great opportunities, great time to buy, and even from a pre-con standpoint, whatever's out there, value's good because builders know that they're vulnerable now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so there's opportunities like maybe you don't have the full down payment, but you have a plan that you want to be in a condo in 3 or 4 years or whatever the case may be. You're working towards that, and there probably are there a lot of opportunities for people buying pre-con in Toronto now. Is the price lower? What is it?
Well, the prices have definitely come down. The prices are also down 20% from the boom 4 or 5 years ago. The problem or the issue is the opportunities. There's lots of opportunities, but they're immediate closings. You're buying a unit that somebody bought 4 years ago that they don't want to close it. There's people trying to sell units saying, I don't even care if I get my deposit back. I just want to get out. A lot of people are underwater. So if you're looking to buy a condo today that closes today, there's a ton of opportunity.
But on the pre-con side, though, is the price down in pre-con or not so much?
You know what? The pre-con price isn't really down and there's not a lot
because of the pro forma and the profitability.
It's a performance, a problem. Builders, and that's why you don't have a lot of products. So the prices are not down, and there isn't a lot out there because, as we discussed, construction costs may be stabilizing, maybe dropping a little. Builders can't afford to sell at the prices that the buyers are prepared to pay.
But
hence, we're at a stalemate. We're very much at a stalemate. So I wouldn't say there's a lot of deals out there. There's nothing out there.
So if I was interested in the pre-con market, because let's say I didn't want to close, or I wasn't able to close right away, or I wanted to put my down payment over time, I suppose there's probably more negotiation power for the buyer.
Absolutely.
So all sorts of deals that people are willing to make.
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
And the other thing that would be interesting, Nick, and I have a few on my plate. So we've got buildings that are closing now. And builders have left inventory that they left over either because they couldn't sell it or because they held it to hopefully sell it for more money to maximize their profit. So once builders aren't usually going to drop their prices when you have people closing. But as soon as those closings are done, then the builders are going to say, I've got X number of units left. What am I going to do? Am I going to hit singles and doubles, as Mark Cohen said, and sell them methodically to maximize my money, or am I going to just get out and dump them all and get my buck and move on? So that's going to be interesting. The buildings that recently close that have inventory, what the builder's appetite will be to sell it, manage it, massage it. That's where there might be some opportunities. But again, you're buying something that you got to move into.
Right. This is, you really gave us some great insight. Are you using any new technologies for marketing and sales, or is it still old school methodical approach? Are you using AI at all?
Yeah, don't use AI, no. But we try to stay leading edge in terms of, I probably shouldn't reference the other suppliers, but leading edge in terms of, things like Blackline I just did. We pay very close attention, and I think the builders like it as well. Who's coming in? Who drives what kind of car, who's looking what kind of unit, who lives here, who lives there, how did people find us? I think over time the industry's become much more automated and digital and technologically advanced as opposed to the old days. And a part of the difference is the old days, in the old days there was no internet. There was no communication. There was no social media. You put a flyer in the mail, and if somebody walks into the sales office with a flyer, it worked. Or you ran an ad in the newspaper. Now, because people find out about projects so many different ways, it's very hard to measure what brings people in. They saw a sign, they saw it on the internet, they heard. In the old days, as I said, there was no social media, there was no technology. So instead of trying to beat our heads up, trying to figure out how people really found out about us, the key is to get people in and to study those people and I guess and to really understand who they are, where they are. And naturally, you ask people, how'd you hear about us? And they'll usually tell you. But you also have to it's also a different world, Nick. You got to be careful about privacy. You're sending notes to people, privacy issues were never issues before, calling people back. You need their consent. So I think from a technological standpoint, the whole industry is getting better at understanding who's coming in and obviously how to sort all the data about purchases and sales and revenue and prices and premiums. So we stay on top of that. And again, I think that's helpful. You learn things that help you go forward to start hitting your singles and doubles again.
Is social media driving a lot of the leads out there, or is it other?
It's everywhere. It is. I mean, how much it drives. It's definitely a reinforcer. Again, it's like many other marketing medium. It's hard to determine how powerful it is. But realtors who influence buyers, whether they're investors or users, realtors are in a good time in Toronto, there might be 80,000 resales and 40,000 new home sales, 120,000 transactions a year, just to get a sense of the scope of the market. In good times, those numbers will be down. Those 100,000 transactions, realtors are involved in 98% of them. So realtors tend to be exposed themselves and tend to, try to get in front of people and generate interest for their clients or for themselves. I use social media to promote real estate, to promote stuff that they've listed, to promote themselves. So social media is powerful. It's important because everyone's on their phone, and everyone has Facebook or Instagram or something.
Yep.
So it's a big deal.
And so to sum it all off, Mark, and it's been a great conversation, and you've definitely given us some insight as to how difficult things are right now, and what people are doing, and what's selling, what's not selling, and the general approach, and how you're taking it, and how other developers are approaching their projects. Where do you see? And I think we're going to be in a tough market for, at least another year, probably. That's my own thoughts there. And you come from, you've been in the industry for a long time. Did you see similarities like this in the late 80s, 90s? Or is it different?
It's a little bit different. I mean, I think I've seen worse markets. I can tell you that. I've seen worse markets. I've never seen one go from so good to so bad so fast.
Yeah.
And that was, I don't know if it was a moment in time, maybe when the rates started moving. I've never. I think the other issue besides the market is the world. The world's a mess. At the same time as COVID, prices go up, rates go up, prices go down. Russia goes to war. The Middle East is at war.
Whose fault is it, Biden or Trump?
And then the United States. I've got to be careful. Since we're on the air, I have to be careful about my political views.
Yeah, you don't have to say anything.
But I have some views.
Okay.
So, in any event, the United States is in a tenuous position. Like, I spent the winter in Florida, so you can't say anything bad because they think whatever they think. Yeah. But the reality is, it's a fragile superpower. We're somewhat dictated by that. The world's rough. The economy's rough. These are tough times.
But it's a great opportunity for Canada, I believe, because
I think so.
We were too dependent on the U.S. and we need to change that. And
exactly,
a good opportunity for that.
Yeah. So I think that I don't know. Is this in some ways is as bad as I've seen, but again, the reality is that builders could afford to sell at the right price. I think people would buy. The restrictions, particularly with concrete, are very difficult. They're going to minimize. They might take away. Development charges are going to be reduced or whatever, and certain tax benefits in terms of investors. Land transfer tax. They're going to do all kinds of things. They're going to say you don't have to build parking for high rises anymore, which will save the builders a fortune. But who's going to buy a high rise without parking? I don't know, unless they're like downtown. So there will be a fix, and the world will turn around. But this is a very severe turnaround. Yeah. It's been going on for a few years. Unless you're giving the stuff away, as far as the future goes, no one's touching it. That's a problem.
Do you see a complete structural change in the future of the marketplace? Is it going to be more domestic driven? Is it going to be less investor driven? What do you believe is going to be the future?
I certainly believe in terms of the recovery, the first steps towards recovery. I don't think it'll be the investor market, and I think it will be the domestics. And I think that Canada is a very good alternative for us and for anyone who's come here. I think that we were talking about Orangeville, and a week ago the Canadian Open was played there, and I was at that golf course last year. I imagine I know when people go to Augusta, Georgia, they rent houses. They do certain things. Orangeville might be much more central to the world than we think. I think that, and that's a built-in market, and people who live there, who go and pick strawberries on the weekend and walk around, they don't want to live in Toronto, and they're not leaving Ontario, and they might not be there. So I think the domestic end user, the market, the stuff that we designed it for, the people we designed it for in the first time are our best target, and they are locals, and they are the traditional cash down, empty nester, cash out, empty nester, and potentially a first-time buyer who can't afford a house or doesn't want to deal with a house. So I think everything that's old is new again. Those are my targets. I think the investors are buying in other provinces. They're buying other things, and I think they're hurting in Toronto. So, but I think the world will get better much sooner than most. And I'm by nature a conservative thinker.
Well, you have been the best guest in a long time.
Thank you.
You're always a great friend, which I really appreciate.
Because you're my friend.
Yeah,
do my best. Yeah.
And we look forward to strengthening the marketplace together. And always a pleasure, Mark. Thank you for such a great talk and giving the audience an insight into where the market is going and what's happening out there. Thank you, Mark.
Great. Thanks so much, Nick.
So hang in there.
And thank you for listening to Building Toronto's Skyline, a podcast exploring the current state of Toronto's condominium industry, proudly brought to you by Fusion Corp Developments, Inc. Please share, like, and subscribe. See you again in 2 weeks.